Hi guys, for today's lesson we're going to be dealing with lengths and midpoints of intervals. So first up, what do I mean by an interval? So an interval is literally just it's just a line between 2 points. So here you can see one point is P, the other point is Q. The interval is literally just a line between them. The midpoint of an interval is the center point of that interval. So with this interval PQ, we call it, because it's the interval between P and Q. The midpoint is literally going to be right in the center. So I'm denoting it M for midpoint. Notice that the lengths of these lines are equal either side of the midpoint. Because the midpoint is directly smack bang in the middle, it halves this interval, if that makes sense. Another thing to notice is the notation for the points. So x1, y1, it's the x and y coordinates of the first point. And this is the x and y coordinates of the second point, if that makes sense. So this notation is used a lot and it's really important to understand. Okay, so some rules to remember. So the length or distance of an interval is found using the following formula. So pretty much what we're using is Pythagoras to derive this. And it comes out looking like this is our formula. This is the sort of thing you want to be remembering. I'm pretty sure this is on your reference sheet in your end of year HSC exam. Okay, so what exactly is happening here? So with our Pythagoras, we're pretty much setting up a right angle triangle to figure out the length of our interval here, this blue line. So the bottom length of our triangle is going to be the difference between x2 and x1, because x2 and x1 are the x coordinates of our 2 points. So the difference here is this length here. The difference is just subtracting the 2. So the x2 take away x1. Same thing here, this length here of our triangle is going to be the difference between the y coordinates of our 2 points. So that's going to be y1 take away y2. And we pretty much get these lengths, and this is what we're going to put into Pythagoras' theorem. So A changes to this length, B changes to this length here, and then lastly, to figure out what the length PQ is, we need to take the square root of all this stuff. So we're literally square rooting all this. So if you pretty much put this whole thing into a calculator, when you know your values of x1 and y1, etc., you'll get your length of your interval. Let's do an example. So find the distance between the points A and B, where we've given you the coordinates, to one decimal place. Okay, so for A, we can see x1 and y1 are there, and we can see that x2 and y2 are right there. We can literally use our formula. We can just substitute in. So 4 is x1. X2 is -2. Notice that this minus here has to come down, and x2 changes to a -2. So we're getting a double negative happening here. So it's going to be like 4 plus 2. So it's really important not to forget your negatives. Same thing happens over here with your y's. -5 take away -1. This negative here had to come down. And we get that's going to be -5 plus 1, which is going to make our -4. So very common mistake is the fact that people forget to put in the double negatives and change it to a plus. Okay, what you can see here is that it comes out as one side is 6 and the other side becomes -4. You can see this from the triangle. So if we graph this length that we're trying to find, because there's our first point, there's our second point, you can see here that this length is 4, like 1, 2, 3, 4 squares. And this length under here is 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So pretty much this is what we're doing in the formula. We're getting our 6 and our 4. And then we're going to be squaring both of these and then taking the square root. So it's literally just Pythagoras' theorem with this triangle. Don't let the -4 confuse you, because you have to take the absolute value of this, which gives you a +4. And when you square it, it doesn't matter whether it's positive or negative. So 36 plus 16 gives you 52. So the answer is the square root of 52. That is the exact value if we keep the square root, but the question has asked for 1 decimal place. Okay, the next thing we need to go through is that the x and y coordinates of the midpoint, now we're trying to figure out how do we find the midpoint, are given by the following formulas. So we've got this formula and this formula for our midpoint. This gives you the value for the x coordinate of our midpoint, and this gives you the coordinate for the y coordinate of our midpoint. Okay, so how do these formulas work? Well, the idea is here is our interval in blue, and we're trying to find this middle point, the middle of P and Q. And how do we do that? Well, if we want to find out the x coordinate of our midpoint, we literally got to go smack bang in between x1 and x2, these x coordinates for P and Q. So how do we find the middle of x1 and x2? Well, we take the average of them. We add them together and then we divide by 2. So that finds the middle point that lines up with our m, which we want. And we do the same thing with our y coordinates here for P and Q. So we find the middle of y1 and y2. We add them together and then divide by 2 to find the average, find the middle, and that gives us the y coordinate for our m. So we do this and we figure out m's coordinates. Okay, let's do an example. So determine the midpoint of this point and this point. So if I graph these 2 points, it's there and there, we can see that of this line, the midpoint is roughly going to be about here. We can see that it's going to be about 1 down the bottom for our x, and it's going to be 2.5 for our y. But how do we do this using the formulas? Well, we apply both of these formulas to figure out what the x and y values are. So putting in our x1 and x2 values, etc., we get minus 2 plus 4 over 2. Well, minus 2 plus 4 gives you 2, and divided by 2, that comes out as 1. So you can see here that our x coordinate is definitely 1. And then we do the same thing for the y values. So minus 1 and 6, add them together, divide by 2, find the average of them. That gives you 5 over 2, which is 2.5. So that is going to be the y coordinate. So our answer is that our midpoint is the point 1, 2.5, which is right there. Okay, hopefully this helps you with the questions. Good luck. Bye.